Today, our adventures take us to the city of Morgantown, West Virginia. Morgantown is located in northern West Virginia, about 75 miles south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and is the home of West Virginia University. We will be looking into an odd curiosity that took place here many years ago. We are visiting the old Oak Grove Cemetery that was once the city's principal graveyard. Oak Grove Cemetery dates back to the 1700s. We are going to be looking into an unusual incident that took place here 49 years ago. On July 1st, 1975, the cemetery's caretaker, Glenn Pierce, was making his rounds when he noticed something odd. Upon closer inspection, he located an unmarked grave that had dirt piled up all around it and a big hole about the size of a softball extending down into the ground. Mr. Pierce shined his flashlight into the hole, and he could see the top of a broken burial vault. Suspecting vandalism, Mr. Pierce reported his findings to his superiors, who in turn called the police. Soon, Morgantown Police Chief Benny Palmer and Detective Lieutenant William Hughes arrived on the scene. The first thing they noticed that there were no shovel marks on the ground or any other indications that the grave had been disturbed from above. Rather, it looked like the soil had been pushed up from underneath. Chief Palmer reached out to one of the local undertakers who came to the cemetery and speculated that maybe built-up gas pressure resulting from a body's decomposition could have caused the grave to erupt. And so the chief ordered that the grave be exhumed. Someone asked if a court order would be required before any exhumation could take place, but Chief Palmer said, "Hey, it looks like the grave has already exhumed itself." So there was no need for a court order, at least in the chief's opinion. Some diggers were brought in and proceeded with the exhumation. The burial vault was brought up in 7 pieces, and inside the broken vault was a small wooden casket. Thinking maybe the answer might be found within the casket, Chief Palmer told Mr. Pierce to open it up. With much trepidation, Mr. Pierce lifted open the casket lid with a shovel. And inside they found the nearly perfectly preserved body of a small boy. His blonde hair glistened in the bright sun. On his chest was the stem of a flower and a little brass plaque that said, "Our Darling." At his feet lay a stuffed plush animal, a toy lion. A quick check of the cemetery's records showed that the grave belonged to Harry Spitz, a little boy who had died of cholera in 1912 at the age of 3. The fact that there was virtually no composition pretty much ruled out the gas pressure theory, and besides that, the grave was 63 years old, so any decomposition gas would have long since dissipated, and not only that, a body as small as Harry's probably could not have produced enough gas to push that much dirt up anyhow. The city's utility department was contacted, and they had no reason to believe that the eruption could have been caused by sewer gas. It was also theorized that methane gas from an old coal mine could have caused the eruption, but there were no records of any coal mining that had ever taken place under the cemetery. And besides that, an old coal mine would have been more likely to cause the grave to sink further into the ground rather than push it up. Dr. Otis Fansler, the chief pathologist at the morgue at West Virginia University Hospital, was asked to weigh in on the matter. Dr. Fansler came to the cemetery and could offer no explanation of how the grave might have erupted. He was concerned, however, that anaerobic organisms from the body might have infected the inspectors, so he took some swab samples from Harry's nose, mouth, and hands. Cultures from these samples later showed that there was no harmful bacteria present. A new burial vault was brought in, the casket placed inside, and Harry was reinterred next to his father, who had died in 1916, 4 years after his death. Surprisingly, they learned that Harry's mother, Desiree Spitz, was still alive and was living in a nursing home in neighboring Preston County. She was 91 years old and in frail health, so it was decided it was probably not best to tell her about the incident. But now is when it really starts to get weird. Once the staff at the nursing home learned of the incident, they reported that, despite her deteriorating mental state, Mrs. Spitz had suddenly started talking about Harry a few weeks before all this happened. It was also reported that the furniture in Mrs. Spitz's room had been mysteriously moving around. The staff would put the furniture back in its proper place, and the next day it would be moved again. And in her physical condition, there was no way that Mrs. Spitz could have moved that furniture herself. Since that time, Harry has become sort of a cult figure, he has been featured as the subject of various paranormal investigation reality shows on the TV cable channels. After his reinterment, a small, simple tombstone was placed at the head of Harry's grave to finally give him some kind of a permanent memorial. Again, Harry faded into history. But Harry's story doesn't end there. In July of 2024, apparently some morbid souvenir hunters came to the cemetery in the middle of the night and actually stole Harry's tombstone.
You bastard!
Some local business owners started a GoFundMe campaign to raise money to buy Harry a replacement stone, and this is a new stone that was placed here earlier this fall. To this day, there has been no plausible explanation of how little Harry's grave was disturbed. And here's where little Harry is buried now. Our darling, Harry Spitz, July 9th, 1909, September the 8th, 1912. Next to him are his parents, Desiree Spitz, who died just about 3 years after the grave eruption took place, and his father Henry, who passed away 4 years after Harry's death in 1916. And this, of course, is the new tombstone that the community raised money for to replace the one that had been stolen. This is the Tactical Panda, signing off.